Hello to all. Seeing it's 1:30, I'd like to call the Electoral Area Directors Committee meeting, Wednesday, October 17th, 2024, to order. I'd like to recognize that and appreciate we're holding this hearing on the traditional territories of the Tishat and Hupa-Chesed First Nations. We are doing this through Zoom and through email. I don't know the email address. Those attendees and delegates, I'd like to, I'm screwing this up. Introductions. I'll do introductions of the committee members and staff members in the boardroom present via Zoom. I will go to my right. That way, clockwise around.
Good afternoon, Cynthia Dick, General Manager of Administrative Services.
Good afternoon, Alex Dyer, Planning Manager.
Hi, everyone. Mike Hurd, General Manager of Planning and Development.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Daniel Sayal, the CAO for the ACRD.
And I am the Chair, Michael Sparrow, at Electoral Area F, Cherry Creek. I'd like to go on Zoom now to Director Sega.
Thank you. I'm Veda Siga, Director for Area C.
Thank you. Director Roth.
Good afternoon. It's Susan Roth from Beaver Creek Electoral Area.
Director Beckett.
Bob Beckett, Area A, Bamfield. Good afternoon.
Director Boyko.
Thank you, Chair. Director Boyko for the electoral area of Beaufort in the wonderful Alberta Valley.
Thank you. And also we have one more person in the room.
Oh, good afternoon. Kama Penny Cote. I'm the Electoral Area Director for Sprout Lake on the ACRD.
Thank you for that. Approval of the agenda. We have a motion to approve. Are there any late items? Hearing none, can we have an approval of the agenda? By Director Roth and...
Wait a minute. Can I say something?
Okay, sure. Yep.
I wanted to add a discussion about incorporation in Beaver Creek to the agenda.
Oh, okay. You want to do it as a motion or notice of motion? How would you like to proceed with this?
Well, I don't know. Can we ask Daniel how we can do this?
Okay, I'll refer to Daniel.
Hi. Yeah, if you want to have that discussion, Susan, if you're okay with it, let's make a notice of motion for the next one. And then what staff can do is we can prepare just an outline of the steps so we can have a more fruitful discussion. So if you can, then let's what you can do is just say that add a under new business, we can put a notice of motion to have a discussion around potential incorporation of Beaver Creek at our next EA meeting. Oh, you're muted, but I'm assuming that you're saying, okay, I'm reading.
Yeah, no, that would work well. So I should bring it up under new business or on the agenda right now?
Why don't we put it on the agenda right now as new business as a notice of motion?
Okay, yeah, I'd like to do that, please.
Okay.
Okay, we'll put it on under new business as notice of motion. As far as this agenda goes, we had a person pass it for Director Cote. And do we have a seconder? Director Beckett. Thank you. All those in favor? Right. Opposed? Passed. No declarations. Any conflict of interest or declaration of $250? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 4, the minutes. Electoral Area Directors Committee meeting held February 29th, 2024. The minutes of the meeting of the Electoral Area Director Committee being held on February 29th, 2024 be adopted.
Move adoption.
Move adoption by Director Cote, seconded by Director Sega. All those in favor? Opposed? We have correspondence. University of British Columbia municipalities update on the Canada Community Building Fund renewal. We have a motion that this correspondence be received. Moved by Director Sega, seconded by Director Roth. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 6, request for decision. Pardon? Can I speak to that? You can, yes.
Please, thank you. Just because I am on the executive for UBCM, I have heard about the conversations with the province and the federal government in UBCM regarding the request to double the gas tax, and that just to inform the board that BC is one of the only provinces that is actually negotiating with the federal government on this, and it looks very positive. So getting good feedback through UBCM. We should hear shortly. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else want to bring anything up? No? Okay. Item 6, request for decision, official community plan updates, resource options. Mike, you want to take it away?
Thank you. So I'll just introduce the report and just run through some of the background, and then I expect there will be questions and discussion after that. Can everybody hear me okay? Because I know we've had some issues. Is everybody?
I think you're okay. When you turn your head back and forth away from the mic, I know you're like to be animated, but as soon as you turn your head away, we can't hear you at all.
Okay.
And 5 of us are online, or 4 of us, so it makes it really hard.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to review the resource options for completing the 6 OCPs. So just to highlight that an RFP was put out for the first 2 OCPs, and we only received 1 proposal. And that proposal to do what I guess what it became clear is to do what the board has asked in the work plan. And I think the expectation of the community is wouldn't work with the budget that we have right now, and jive with the work plan that the board set out. So to achieve the background work and the community engagement, an increase in the budget available would be required. And the Community Works Funds for 2024 is available and could be used to support the community planning work. If the committee supports this, we would continue to look for other grants and funding options that the Community Works Fund, and then the Community Works Fund could be reallocated. And I just want to note that it is important that each of the OCPs to be developed in a consistent way that is equitably funded through each of them. The timeline is also important, as all of the EA communities are interested in updates and changes to the OCPs in their area. And two important examples are the housing options that can be developed through updating the OCPs, and the economic opportunities through new home industry and review and changes to the home occupation opportunities. And those are developed through policies in the OCPs that would then carry on into the zoning bylaw. The community works funds are intended for the electoral areas, and this use would align with the planning service and the board's strategic plan. So I think I will stop there, and I'm happy to answer questions that committee members have.
Thank you. I have Director Siga and then Director Boyko.
It sounds like if you only have one response to or application to do this project, perhaps we need to leave it open a bit. And I'd also be interested in opening up discussions with the University of Victoria and their program, public administration program, to see if perhaps some students or professors would be interested in supporting this kind of work, because it would certainly be a learning opportunity for them and be advantageous for us. And perhaps they could piece it together in a more economical way. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Director Boyko?
Thank you, Chair. So a couple of questions here. So there's been a recent change in the BC government policy with regard to OCPs. Specifically, in about 4 months ago in November, we are now being required to do this update every 5 years, right? And I'm pretty sure I'm reading that correctly. So the way that this is laid out, this is going to be a huge onerous process with million dollars roughly paid to a consultant to do this. It's going to take 3 years, and basically when we're done, we're going to restart and do the whole thing over again. We need to find a better way to do this. Do we need to have a consultant? Can we not just do it ourselves? Do we need to consult all the agencies and First Nations that are involved? Because traditionally, I don't think that's been done for OCPs. Why are we bringing it in now? We need to streamline and simplify these processes. These are 35-ish page documents. We can finalize and do a better strategy on how to do this more efficiently that will take place in months rather than years. Because in 5 years, we're restarting the whole thing over again. So I want to put that out there and let's have a good discussion about it. Thank you.
Certainly some of, I mean, I think I'll go back to the consultation part. That is required and is always, it has always been practice to refer to the agencies, and there was requirements to refer to agencies and First Nations set out in the legislation. So there's parts of that we don't have an option to. It's also good practice because we're a regional district. There's a lot of overlap with provincial ministries that regulate things. So certain things like the Ministry of Transportation must approve the OCP as well. So there's some examples there. Certainly, once you're correct. Once they're done, updates are required, and it is. I would agree that it is an onerous task. I would around the process and the requirements to do a small electoral area with a few hundred people is exactly the same process that a large municipality such as Victoria has to go through. Sort of the regulatory process requirements really are the same. So because we're doing 6, we still have to follow all of those steps. Around the engagement, sort of the actual drafting of the OCP and the policies is really the easy and quick part. It's engaging with the community, and certainly as we went through the minor updates to the OCPs when we were looking at the zoning bylaw updates, we found that without consultation and the community meetings, the community was concerned. So certainly as we went through this fall, what we heard from each of the electoral areas was a desire to be more involved in the development of the OCPs, and that is the process. I think following up and updating the OCPs regularly up every 5 years, once the bigger rewrites that we're proposing here are done, will be, simpler and sort of fit into what you're just talking about, Director Rico, as far as not as much work really needs to go in it, but as far as the consultation and the outreach, that's something that we're required to do, even with OCP, the minor OCP amendments that we're dealing with as part of individual applications. I think I answered all your questions. If I missed some, let me know.
Just a quick follow-up before we get into something else. What does it specify for community engagements? Because traditionally in the past couple of years, we've had a problem of getting good engagement with the public and having low response numbers. Like, for example, the Aquatic Center, we had 4% of the population in Alberni Valley actually fill out a survey. What is the plan to make that better for the public to get better responses from everybody? I mean, we've done open houses, we've had cafe style things, we've had blah, 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 but we still don't have good numbers. We need a different plan to actually get better engagement. I'm just wondering what's going to happen there.
Certainly, depending on what's decided as far as resources, but I'd say for a good robust engagement. It includes like all of the things we're doing, providing options for online engagement, in-person meetings through open houses, but also holding pop-ups and site-specific, or targeting specific things like doing having a pop-up booth at a farmer's market, for example, or coinciding with some of the community association or community meetings in Banfield, engaging community affairs. As an example, where we know people are showing up, we can certainly tag on to those events. I think is the best way. It's always a challenge, getting members of the public out, really, unless it's something controversial. But those are the ways to do it.
Daniel, want to say something?
Yeah, if I can add to that, I think what we're seeing is, and what Mike is alluding to is, we're seeing a lot of change and people struggling to keep up with that change. And so when we're doing something as significant as an OCP, rightfully people are wanting to have an opportunity to have a voice. And what we found is the best way to do that is, in my opinion, given what we just learned from aquatics, online is most certainly the strongest response, because people engage when they can on their own time. But if we're going to actually have dialogues, a live dialogue is always really important. And I think what we've seen is, some weekends and evenings are better than others. And it's a lot of legwork to get in front of people where they're at in the right headspace to have the discussion around things that are relatively complex, like an OCP. And so I think I just want to circle back to the fact that I would not anticipate $1 million rewrite every 5 years. What I would anticipate here is, because of all the change we've seen in the last 3 years, we would see a significant rewrite of OCPs on this round. And then what I would recommend is that we equip our OCPs with what I call report card surveys. So every 5 years, we do a report card survey. People speak to the issues that are of concern or of interest, and we simply use that information to hone in on those 2 or 3 top areas as an OCP revisit, which is something that we can do in-house at that point, as opposed to a complete rewrite. So I want to flag that this is a much larger initiative that we're doing right now. In terms of engagement, it is a valid question that I think it's a larger question that we should have when it comes to communications. We have a communications person, which is very useful, but we need to talk about what is core to our organization, and if ongoing engagement online or in person is something that we want to do beyond just OCPs, as part of our regular business, checking in on key issues, having, there's so many tools like short surveys that we can send out. If you take a 15-minute survey and break it apart into pieces, we could do every 2 or 3 weeks just an email blast with 1 question or 2 questions that people answer. And at the end of the year, you have the equivalent. So there's lots of different things that we could do. But there again, it becomes a matter of what we deem to be core, because that would shift the amount of staff that we have as core to the ACRD, as opposed to what we do right now. We tie these individuals to contracts. They do the survey work. They create, like we did with aquatics, they create all that. We simply oversee it and they do the work. So I'll put that in as just consideration. Is the expansion of communication something we see as core, or is it something we're happy to see as one-off projects across a number of different projects?
Thank you. I have a number of questions also. So I know that the city of Port Alberni is going through their OCP right now. I don't know where they're at in their process. But if any directors want to see what is being offered and how they're dealing with it, that's a really good example of right now they're actually going through it and trying to get community engagement I couldn't tell you offhand what they've done for community engagement. I have been through this process before in the past. It has been very contentious. There was a proposal for Appletown at Sprout Lake, and it brought all of the people out. That's why I'm sitting here today, actually, because people weren't happy with the community vision that was being proposed. That's why I think that the staff here have really learned how to try to engage and recognizing that there needs to be a process where community is engaged and have a say in what their vision is, what they want, what they don't want. There's lots of opportunities coming forward in the next while for development, whether a community wants it, whether they don't want it. And a question to staff, I believe that we were supposed to update our OCPs every 5 years anyways. So I don't think that's really anything new. It's just that it's very difficult to organize that. And we were going through the zoning process, I believe, from the last OCP. So it puts us to where we are today. I'll leave that at that for this moment. Thank you.
Do you want to respond?
Yeah, and yes, OCPs, the past practice is it's good policy to update them every 5 to 7 years. Now the province has legislated once they're updated, they must be updated and reviewed every 5 years. So that's the recent change that's happened. And I didn't touch on Director Sega's comments about utilizing, looking at other options, and we certainly have looked at that. And in the past, we have done some OCP work with planning schools at BIU. Yes, and we can do it. Again, I would just caution that I think it would slow the process down. You're dealing with one professor and a myriad of students who are students and learning the profession, as opposed to experienced professionals in doing that. And that's part of it. So in putting this together, my understanding is that the EA directors want to move this forward as quickly as possible, and wanting to do that. There are other options. It's just they would slow the process down. I think the other thing that's happening right now is that with all of the provincial changes, there's so much demand for this kind of work from every municipality. I think that's impacting it as well. It's just who's available out there. So I'll stop there and go back to the questions.
We'll go back to Director Cote.
Thank you. So the proposal that we have right now, is that for all 6 OCPs or just 1 or 2, and could we maybe, I don't know where the city is in their process, maybe somebody would like to continue on with the area and knows a lot about what the city has to offer for the regional areas that we don't provide. I'm not saying that we marry into the city at all, but it's just that there would be a lot of information that's already available to any consultants. Thank you.
So the RFP was for 2 with the option to look at extending, is how it was done. And we did reach out to a number of firms.
Thank you. Yeah. So one quick comment: if the province is telling everybody to do this at the same time, the 5-year time span, 5 years from now, we'll all be in the same boat, going up the same river again. We'll be never ending. Is that right?
Yes, but as Daniel had mentioned, I think the appropriate way to structure this would be to look at the reviews being they're not the in-depth rewrites. It's just looking at the OCPs. If you're looking at it in 5 years, reviewing it, making some minor changes. There isn't and some of that could be done in-house and should be done in-house sort of moving forward.
Thank you. Good. Okay, I thank the patience of Director Roth and Director Sager. Can Director Roth go first, please?
Thank you. Why can't we create a template for a consultation process and follow it? Isn't it all about creating a communication strategy specifically for the OCPs? To me, it doesn't seem that complicated, like we should be doing it in-house. And if we listen to the people, we'd understand they want less rules. This would cut the OCP in half. So really, I feel like we should be doing this in-house. It's just a matter of creating a strategy and following the same one for all. So perhaps the first one would be the hardest, but yeah, I just can't imagine even not doing this ourselves. Thank you.
I'll let Daniel answer that.
I'll answer that one. It's not the strategy. The strategy is you're correct. Like you sort of have a template strategy of what it is, what key areas you're going to discuss and when and whatnot. But it is the implementation of the work that is labor intensive. And the challenge that we have is that there's really a number of different ways, that we could do this. But I'll break it down into two general. One is you could have planners complemented with communications facilitation people, and they do this. The communications people do the facilitation, issue the surveys, collect the data, and the planners sort of put that together and start rewriting or altering policy as a result of that, or their OCP documents or policy as a result of that. The other is that you have planners doing both, and so I know at a staff level we've already had that discussion. Given that the entire province is sort of got we're all at the start line doing the same thing. We may need to do a complement of planners supported by facilitation, but it is the implementation and then the drafting that becomes labor intensive, because at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is create a policy that is going to serve as a general visionary guideline. And then from there, distill that into impacts for things like their zoning bylaw and other affiliated bylaws that we have that connect into it. So it's just to remember that the OCP is really our central document that is the guiding vision. And so we need a lot of dialogue around that. And if people want to remove things, that's great. But what's important is that as we go through, we dialogue the impacts of those removals to make sure that everyone is going into a situation eyes wide open. And if I can use the recent enforcement that we have with trailers on a property, in the absence of the regulations that we had around that, we would have been completely helpless to the enforcement and removal of those RVs that were suddenly moved from Port Alberni to the rural area. And so it's just talking about those scenarios with the public to make sure that they understand the ramifications and that we as staff understand the intent, and from there end up with the best possible document. That's what takes time.
Thank you. And Director Sega?
Thank you. I see this as a real opportunity for us to create capacity within the ACRD management team. And so I agree with Director Roth that we should look at somehow, instead of putting these funds out to contracting them out to somebody who is going to provide us with a template that they already have developed in some other community, we actually develop this in-house, doing a contract with an employee who would be part of the ACRD team and working to build this capacity so it's an ongoing process for us as opposed to hiring a contracted person every 5 years. I do think that you're talking about that it's going to be more time consuming if we do work with some of these students that are going to be coming out and doing the planning in the future for us anyway. These students that are coming out are usually learning the latest innovative strategies to develop these things. So I would hate to be jumping on the bandwagon with other communities and hiring the same consultants that are just redoing these templates for everybody when we have an opportunity to build capacity in-house by being innovative ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Good comments. And Director Boyko, you have something?
I would like to thank the previous director Siga for those comments. I wholeheartedly support them. How many staff do we have right now? We got about 48 or 49, right, Daniel? Somewhere around there.
Yeah, that's correct.
So if we take all of our community funds monies and say they're not going to be used for community funds anymore, I'm sure we can put that into those funds that we're going to allocate and take staff time away from something else. Maybe we can reallocate that time to have one of those people develop this in-house. I'm just reading the OCP right now, and between the 6 electoral areas, 95% of it is cut and paste. And there's some different areas, like there's more farms in Beaufort, and we don't care, or we're in the future, the thing about the 5-acre limitation on businesses, I'm sure will disappear from several of the electoral areas and things like that that's currently in here. But I mean, I can't see most of this not being cut and paste between the areas. It's going to be different maps, different other things, but most of the jargon is going to be cut and paste. And when we had the zoning bylaw come in as a draft a couple of years ago, that was widely not liked by a lot of different people for various reasons. It was obvious that it was copied from a different electoral area, and things like how many trailers are on your property and all these things that magically appeared that weren't there before. It was copied from a different place, and when we do that, we bring in a lot of different problems into the ACRD that the people are not expecting. So if we can develop a homegrown solution, and if it takes us a couple months to go through each electoral area, have that person do something else for a year or two, then come back and restart it, I think that's a fine idea, rather than paying a consultant every 5 years. And right now it's planned that consultant's going to be, we're going to spend $1 million on this consultant over the next 3 years or whatever it is to do the 6 OCPs. You let them go somewhere else for a bit and then come back and redo it. I don't know. I got a big problem with that. That's a large expenditure of taxpayer funds, whether it's from gas tax or whatever. I know it comes from a different budget, but it still comes from a certain number of taxpayers in the ACRD area. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. I'll give it over to Daniel to further comment.
So if the committee is heading in the direction of wanting an in-house solution, what I would recommend is that staff come back with a plan on what that would look like. Again, it's all about shifting resources or timelines, right? And so at the end of the day, if we want to do it in-house without adding more staff to complement things, other things would shift back. If we want to do the work in-house and add temporary staff, then we would look at that one. We were just going off of the last budget discussion where I think it was quite clear no new staff was the message, and so we are going down the route of consultants. But I think there is wisdom to having the discussion on what it looks like as an in-house solution and talking about the full range of adding permanent staff to one extreme and then temporary staff on the other, or reallocation of resources, reprioritization would be the discussion that we have. And if the committee would like to go in that direction, then I would recommend telling us to explore that, and we will come back with a few options to look at on what it could look like. I know Mike wants to say something too, but I want to frame that. At the end of the day, we're here to seek direction on how you would prefer to advance, and we will do our best to inform you along those lines.
Go ahead, Mike.
And certainly I agree with all of that. I also want the committee to be aware of the timeline around some of this, and what we're talking about with using consultants is probably the quickest way to accomplish that, and it's still a 3-year process. So just there is also the all of the OCPs on all of the areas. Certainly from what I understand, the areas are wanting their OCPs updated. So just I want to be cognizant of timelines and time frame. And this has been something that Director Cote, you had mentioned earlier. We started this a long time ago, and it keeps going in fits and starts. So just I just wanted to highlight that as well.
Thank you. I have Director Beckett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, good discussion. A couple observations and then comments. So, with respect to, and I'm just talking Bamfield now, with respect to Bamfield's OCP review, and picking up on comments from Mike and Daniel and my colleagues around the table, I'm going to simplify it, dummy it right down. The two parts of this is the technical / planning side of the actual OCP, and then there's the facilitation or communication process with respect to our communities, all with the hope and desire that you're creating a policy, i.e. the OCP, that at the end of the day is the best possible document, because the last thing we want to do is have a half-ass effort, and I hope that doesn't offend anybody, that language, but I don't want a half-assed effort. At the end of the day, I want the best possible document that speaks to what we're trying to maintain and or create in our community, sustainable, environmentally, socially, and economic community. So that's my kind of big look view of the OCP review. I want to go back and step back just a moment and tell you a little bit about my experience with the proposed sewage project process that we've been going through. And it has not been an easy process, because there are varying opinions, and a lot of information has been requested. Now, the good news is that because we've got good community engagement, not perfect community engagement, because I don't think there's enough people that have taken it upon themselves to get the information that I think they're going to need in order to make an educated decision. But we've gone through some growing pains, and staff and the consultant, based on the feedback, have we've experimented to some degree, if I could use that word, by having in-house meetings, virtual meetings, planning additional meetings, and that whole process is evolving and has become fairly complex, to the point where last night at the Bamfield Community Services meeting, we asked staff to delay an assent vote until later on. Now that's coming to the board for discussion, so I won't go into details about the date, but we've asked for a delay because we feel that there's going to be additional information that's got to come forward, and that is going to impact staff, because now we're asking them for more work and more effort with respect to the communication consultation process. And I know I'm not articulating this very well, but what I'm trying to say is that it's been an awful lot of work for everyone involved to try to do it right. And I'm confident that we are actually moving in that direction, but what an onerous task. And I'm concerned, just using the Bamfield sewer project as an example, is, and I mentioned it last night to Jenny, is if we delay the decision or the assent vote because the community rightfully needs or wants some additional answers, what kind of onus does that put on staff? Because there are other electoral areas that have needs and wants. So I'm trying to be a realist with respect to, okay, we've got to make sure that we've got the horses, the wherewithal, whether it's in-house or whether it's a hybrid with consultants or whatever it looks like. We got to make sure we're not robbing Peter to pay Paul as we move forward. And I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I have Director Cote, Director Roth, and then Director Boyd.
Thank you. The previous OCPs, they may look simple, but they're very complicated. I'm going through some of my thoughts as to what's going to have to be included in an OCP. Still, and remembering that staff still have day-to-day work that they have to do, because this office still has to run. So I know that in the past, for the past OCP, staff were involved. They had to participate and give a lot of information. OCPs are very complex, although they might not look it. But so I'm not sure that our staff have the abilities at this time, unless you start taking our senior management to be able to do an OCP. I think students could be part of the solution, but not the full-on solution. I think students have always been a great asset in the past. Referral times, that's something we don't have control over. There was a lot of referrals in the past that would go out to different agencies, and they would have to take a look at how the unintended consequences of an OCP as to what you want. So those referral times are quite complicated, and what happens in there. So I'm just looking at, okay, water, especially everybody has water concerns. Well, how are we going to, what does the community want as far as stewardship, forestry and watersheds, air quality, food securities? This is all part of what makes a community. Fire, drought, flood, climate change. How are we going to initiate climate change into our vision? Strategies for seniors. We had the study that's on the shelf. We've done these studies, and they were intended to be used for things like our OCP. First Nation inclusion. How are we what does that look like for our future? And then you put on the provincial and federal mandates. So it may be a very short document, but what's behind it is just unbelievably complicated. It would be great if we could hire somebody, but I don't know if that's the solution. And as staff have said, it's going to take time to get somebody there, and without taking away our senior management concerns. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments and background. Director Roth?
Thank you. I think we know ourselves better than anyone else. And the OCP is who we are. It's who each area is. So I do think we should at least try to do it in-house, and at least look, like what Daniel was speaking about, at least look at what it would look like if we did it in-house. So I would like to make a motion. I'd like to move that staff create a plan to carry out the OCP process in-house in a timely manner. So basically, what would it look like to do it in-house?
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Fred, you seconding that motion? Okay, thank you. We have a seconder. You have a motion on the floor. Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? You have your hand up, Fred? Still? Want to do that? Okay, start with Director Michael.
I think everyone's going to have a little talk about this, but I'm just going through this strategic plan here, and I'm sure we can reallocate some resources with a discussion with the CAO and the senior management about what's most important. We've been delaying this bylaw review for a while. People are expecting it to come out. There's a lot of people that want to see some changes that are good and positive in there, as well as get the right document. You need to get the OCPs to do that. I'm sure we can reallocate some resources and slow down. Like, we don't need to go and put a $400,000 bridge over the Howell Creek washout on the Log Train Trail and spend resources doing that. Been washed out for a long time. We can remove that. Things like that. Right? Do we need to look at the hole in the wall right away? I don't know. Maybe push that off a couple years. There's things that we can do. We can push off to make this the priority of staff, because this affects everything that we do for the whole valley. That's why. How we're going to do that, I don't know. I'd like to see a plan put together and what we can postpone, what we can focus on. I also want to see a plan for better community engagement, like specific things that we're going to do, because some things are working and some things we can do a lot better. Thank you. And have some innovation. Oh, with regard to students, with Director Sega, we use them on the Log Train Trail review. And I'll be honest, some of those students got to see what real planners have to deal with people on a real life. It's great work experience. I had a lot of co-op job experiences, and that set me up for success moving forward in the future. They can do a lot of the legwork, like sit down with people and actually talk to them face to face, as opposed to getting staff resources to do that. Lots of things we can do. AI for report writing is getting better every day. I tell you, I'm using it right now to send out emails and things like that. I'm sure we can come and play with that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. You want any, no comments? Okay, Director Sega?
Thank you. Yeah, I think that I do think that it will require somebody hired new in-house to coordinate this. But I think by doing that hire, if we do it on a contract basis for this piece, then through this whole process, all of these people are becoming more educated about the process, so that in future, hiring somebody to redo the OCPs is going to be easier, and it won't be a competition for the resources that are being sought after province-wide. So I think we should hire somebody in-house and consider it an investment in capacity building for improving the capacity of ACRD. Thank you. And we have the funds.
Yeah, thank you for that. Do you want to answer that first, Mike? Then we'll go to Director Cote.
I do, and I'm wondering, I know Shane is online and he was going to answer some of the finance questions regarding the funding that we're using to do the consultants, because there are limitations on that funding if we're looking at using staff. I know we cannot use existing staff with that funding, so I'm not sure, Shane, if you're there. I see.
Good afternoon, everyone. So yes, Mike is correct in relation to existing staff. What we could do is we could definitely look into options surrounding temporary staff, similar to a consultant working on a staff level. But that's something that we'd definitely be happy to bring back and provide more options if we do move forward with this.
Okay, thank you. Director Cote.
Thank you. I would agree. I think it would be great if we could hire somebody, but I think we're going to run into the same problems. I think that all of the companies, the consulting companies, have hired up everybody. If you look around at different regional districts in incorporated areas, everybody is having problem hiring for all positions. So I don't know that we would necessarily get someone to be able to come and work for us. That was someone that we would really want to have working on this. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll go to Daniel and then we'll go to Director Blake.
You're not wrong, and I think this is why, ultimately having staff come back with a few options for you to consider, and we're going to have to do it really quickly to make sure we're not losing the timelines. I think what Mike is saying is valid. The longer we discuss the overall plan, the less likely we are to hit our timelines. And, already I'll say that at a staff level, thinking about the alternatives, right? So you think of the planners we do have, how can we maximize their efforts at planning, and then complement in the right areas is likely going to be the strategy that we have to adopt. We have already had our airport planner scooped up by the city of Nanaimo, and so that'll be my first loss. Started working here, losing a staff, so we're going to be one planner short there, and we are of course talking strategies already about what's the alternatives for how we could manage some of these shifts. So I do think ultimately, if this is the motion that the committee would like to go towards, Mike, Alex, and I are going to sit down in really quick order to come up with some alternatives and bring those back, likely to the board, because that'll be the next meeting as opposed to committee, but we'll figure that one out with you as well.
Thank you. Director Boyko.
Thank you, Chair. I know it's not going to be easy. Going to the moon for the first time wasn't easy, but when you put your heads together, you can solve problems. This is a lot less complex than sending a rocket to the moon. That being said, any good business, be it government, private, public, doesn't matter, has a strategy that nobody is the most important person. And you have to plan on redundancies and contingencies when people leave, whether they get scooped up by the city of Nanaimo, whether they win the lottery, or whatever else you want to say. So having people that can be trained to do multiple jobs, whether they go on pregnancy leave, is good. So building the capacity, changing the capacity of what we currently have, being able to do this with multiple people instead of relying on a consultant, and having a team that can do it when people can step in and help each other out and complement each other, I think is a good way to go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll make a few comments now. It's my turn, I guess. So I'm sort of confused in a way. What I'm hearing is you want to keep it in-house. You may want to hire students. There should be a consultant. Or do you want to hire somebody, because you keep asking how many people are working in the ACRD, you want to keep the number low, but if we keep it in-house with the people we have, then what happens to people that are trying to get their subdivisions going? Because there's only so many people in the room, and when you take them out for OCPs, we actually lose our ability to progress forward with our land development. So with a small group of people, either we make the people group bigger to accommodate all we're doing, or we go to consultants, and the motion on the floor right now is keep it in-house. So is it the wish of the board moving forward to increase the amount of people in this department in order to get this work going? Or do we slow down the planning and development because we don't have the capacity to do planning and development? It can't be both. It's got to be one or the other. So are we going to increase the ACRD number of staff, or are we going to slow down development? So that's my question to what we have to ask, because there's a motion on the floor to keep it in-house. I want to know what that's going to look like if we pass that motion. Thank you. And I have Director Cote. You have your hand up? Thank you.
Thank you. Having someone on staff that could be the go-to is I think would be really important. And whether we have to extend our staffing, that might have to happen. But I see this project as a prime example of how you pool your resources. So you hire a consultant, they usually have a team behind them. So they have someone who does communication, someone who does the consultation with different agencies. They pool out the work. If you have one person on your staff, they're not going to be able to do all of those jobs. So that means they're going to be tapping into the rest of our resources here, the rest of our pool. Pools are so important as far as going forward, and extending those pools and getting the knowledge that we need from other agencies, from other areas is to our benefit. We'll do a better job in the end. Anyways, that's all I had to say. Thanks.
Thank you for that. I have Director Roth and then Director Boyko.
Thank you. I'd just like to say that planning decisions are based on our OCPs. In other words, our OCPs should be the priority. It's the overall, it's what we need. I think the motion is to look at what it would look like if we did it in-house. Like, it's to give us that option of doing it in-house. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Boyko and then.
I think everyone's coming to a similar plan here, and having it, we want to send directions to the staff to give us a report on what to do with internal work, to give us the capacity to keep doing this ourselves. So if it takes a little bit to generate that capacity, and maybe we take someone that's a junior planner or someone that's in a different department and move them over, or someone that comes externally, whatever that answer is, generate the capacity, have some redundancy. I like what Director Cote just said about working together and pooling resources. So the last time we had an OCP talk in Beaufort, we had about 12 staff people show up and 7 actual residents show up. But those weren't all planning staff. We actually had communications people, we had other people from other departments, other people step in to help each other out, people from the parks area, whatever it is. Pooling the resources to do things, I think, is a great thing, especially with public engagement. So we're doing a great job. What we want to do is, I think what Director Roth is saying is send directions to staff to say, listen, you guys are the top managers of this place. You guys get paid a lot of money. Give us a plan that will work with the resources you have, and tell us if we need to add more and what we need to postpone to make it work. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Mike, do you want to say anything or no? No?
No, I just wanted, well, I did. There's a couple things. I did want to highlight sort of the around the development applications, and certainly the growth and the population growth in the electoral areas, as well as the development applications, and I don't want to use the word pressures, because I think a lot of the things that are happening are really good things in all of the electoral areas, but I don't want to slow those down or pause those. Would my advice would we keep going on that, because that's important, for the community, and it's important for the economy, to keep that going. And on page 12, there is the recent census data and population growth for each area. And on page 13, the last 10 years of development applications, up to the end of, from 2018 to 2023, not 10 years, the development applications for building permits, all development applications and subdivision applications. And I think those are important. My advice is certainly that we maintain the ability to deal with these applications and move them forward. And Director Roth, you're absolutely correct. The OCPs are the foundation for how we look at growth and development. And when they become out of date, when we're looking at individual applications, it's almost like you're doing mini reviews, or you're missing, parts of that. And I think we have seen some of those where neighbors have come out concerned about development applications in their area. But I certainly wouldn't recommend that we delay those. Going back over the last couple of years, we had some times where applications were out there for a period of time, and certainly we had people yelling at us because things were taking too long. And as certainly all of us on staff, felt the same way. We didn't want those delays. So I think that's important. We'll bring the report back, and as staff, we will do whatever the board directs us to do, but I just want to make sure that we're keeping all of those things in context. So thank you.
Thank you. I have Director Beckett, and then I have Director Sega.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could wave a magic wand, I'd be saying, let's hire a staff member who is an OCP expert that could utilize existing staff to help in whatever component they need, whether it's communications or whether it's building or bylaw or whatever. That person would also, when they weren't working on the OCP review, would be assisting all our communities with addressing our housing challenges. And again, that would be a wonderful in-house asset. That's the crystal ball or the magic wand. But getting back to the motion at hand, and I believe it was Director Roth that first brought that motion forward about doing something in-house. I stand to be corrected. I'm not opposed to that, and I would vote for that. Having said that, I would prefer if the report was a matrix that showed pros and cons of both approaches, so that we had that comparison in front of us and not just simply in-house. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Mike, do you want to?
And we're happy to include that. I think that's a great idea and request. Yes, we will definitely include that if that's the direction we go.
The resolution to make sure. I think the wording works.
Okay, we're going to go. We have Director Sega, then Director Beck, Director Boyko, then Director Roth. Sorry. You're awful quiet in your end, Director Sega.
Okay. It's a moving target trying to find the unmute button, sorry. So I through the chair, I'd just like to ask Mike if he had the $1 million dollars to hire and do this work, do you think that would support the development of an OCP that would be acceptable for 5 years?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Director Boyko?
It's interesting. I don't know if you just throw money at something and make it work, but having the time and effort to put it together is good. With regard to something we just talked about, the development permits, just to go off topic for a second, but now that everyone is in the same room about this, are we not supposed to get quarterly updates on the development permits, how they're going, how long things are taking, that kind of thing? That this is the proper venue for that to happen, to see if we have some key performance indicators on how things are going, and that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mike wants to answer that?
Certainly, we have it. We'll be having really soon the updates on our website, just the applications overall. If that's something that the electoral area directors would like to see, the committee would like to see a quarterly update as far as applications. We're happy to put that together and bring that forward for every electoral area meeting going forward. That's certainly something we can do.
I think in our strategic plan we talked about in November, we all decided that we were going to move to have every application on the website within a year, what was happening, where it was in the process of the 13 different steps. And every quarter we're going to have a public report on what had happened and where things were in each application. So the public is very aware of where they stand and how long things are taking, because that's going to relate exactly to this OCP update as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll get Daniel to answer that. Thank you.
That is correct. And we do have the spreadsheet that is going to be up this month that has all of that. So that information is going to be there. So staff have been creating that. And then to have the live running version, we need the link to CityView, and CityView has been, I'll be respectful, challenging to work with on this file. And as such, we're starting with the spreadsheet, and CityView will be on the coattails of that spreadsheet.
Thank you for that. I have Director Roth and then Director Cote.
I'm thinking we could also add more involvement from our APC committees in each area, so that would help with doing it in-house. You know, a lot of times we forget that we already have the people that we need to talk to, or a lot of the people that we can talk to make it work. Thanks.
I'll get Mike to answer that question.
Oh, yes, I had great, I'm glad you brought that up. Absolutely, sort of whatever scenario we go forward, moving, or however we do the OCPs, absolutely the APCs, are the committee that all of the updates get run through. So there would be multiple meetings with the APCs on the individual area post community plans. So absolutely, they are key to developing the OCPs. As Director Cote said, the heart and soul of it.
Thank you for that. Director Cote.
Thank you. Just in response to Director Sega asked about the $1 million, if that would work. But there was the question also about staff in-house funding might not be eligible. So in which case that would really affect how we move forward. Thank you.
I'll get Daniel to answer that question.
Thank you. I think my understanding of the resolution is that we would have that in the report to say what we can and can't do, what it would look like, just to really that full gamut of, if we were to move everything around and not add any staff, this is what it looks like. If we were to add staff, this is who we'd add, and this is where and why, and at the cost, and could we offset the cost with grants? And in there, like, there'll still be a reminder, right? Because I think there are comments made during the budget that, it starts as a grant staff and then it becomes a permanent staff. So just eyes wide open. We're going to this is where things like this start, right? We say, here's the report, nothing sneaky about it. If we're starting with a grant staff and if the work continues, then yeah, they might become permanent staff. But otherwise, this is where we'd start and this is where we'd likely end.
Thank you for that. I have one question. So it's going to be about $1 million in the pot when you start OCPs. Will that do all your OCPs and some of the bylaws, or is this money just going to be enough to do the OCPs? Because aren't bylaws more expensive?
I think I would want to, if we're going to use consultants, this would get the OCPs and the bylaws. Like the OCP is ultimately a bylaw, and through adoption, right? So that would do that. I think we want to sit down and sort of go through the finances of if this is done in-house with staff and how that would work. And I think realistically, what level of staff we would be hiring, because it's the workload, and it's different if you're hiring somebody with 10 years experience versus somebody that's just coming out of school. But I think that's best. We will include that in the report that comes back to the board if that's what the director's wanted.
Okay, thank you. I have Director Roth and then Director Boyko.
I thought we had a union agreement that addresses the terms of employment, including how long you can hire, like it could match up with the grant application. I thought that was something that we've already agreed upon with the union.
That will be a Daniel question.
Yes, we do.
Director Boyko?
Yes, thank you. With regard, I lost my train of thought here. Anytime you have a sole source contract, it causes problems. So, for example, there's only one person that applied, and I'm pretty sure I'm correct on the one for Banfield. Banfield's also in a unique position where the last time they had a contract come up last summer for the water and septic system, there's only one person that bid on it as well. So they're having 30% cost increases there. So anytime you're having sole source contracts, it causes many problems, and taxpayers do not like having 30% tax increases. So need to figure out a way that if the people are not applying or putting forward bids that are competitive, then we stop doing it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Any more discussion? Okay, we do have a motion on, do you want Cynthia to read the motion out first? Thank you.
That the Electoral Area Directors Committee directs staff to create a plan and process on how the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District could carry out the official community plan updates in a timely manner using staff of the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District.
So we've already had the motion and it's been seconded. Yes, Dr. Beckett?
Thank you. I'm just wondering, Director Roth, do you object to having the information coming back to be a bit more broad scope to compare all of the options? My concern with voting for the way it's written now is that we're fixated or focused on internal. And as I've mentioned, I support the initiative. My preference would be that we're looking and making a decision on the best approach ultimately at the end of the day.
Can I answer you? Can you make it a separate motion so that both, so it could be quite confusing if we had it all in one, but I don't mind at all looking at both. We kind of already know what it looks like if it's not done in-house, but maybe if we have two motions, I would support your motion too.
And if I can respond back to that, Mr. Chair, I think we're talking about the same thing, and I don't care how we approach it. I think that your initiative will allow staff to identify through a matrix the pros and cons of both processes, which I think will be helpful to all of us in making that decision. So,
sure, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think it's okay to include that. I just think that would be very complicated to put out there, but yeah.
Whatever works. I think staff's got my interest and message, and however we want to work it. Thank you, Susan.
Thanks.
Hey, thank you to both. I think Daniel would like to say a few words.
Perhaps if the committee would want to consider an amendment, I'll give you some wording, and if you don't like it, that's okay. So the amendment would add options for and versus contracted alternatives. And I'm going to place them in the resolution just so you know what it would sound like. That the Electoral Area Directors Committee directs staff to create a plan and process on options for how the ACRD could carry out the official community plan updates in a timely manner using staff of the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District versus other contracted alternatives.
Director Sega?
And can that new motion also put in something about and support building OCP planning capacity within ACRD? Because I think that's the key difference to me, is whether we put out the money every 5 years or whether we build a capacity so that we have informed people working to redo this in 5 years. Thank you.
I will go to Director Roth and Director Boyko, and then we'll get back to the motion.
I just wanted to say that I liked the amendment that Daniel proposed.
Okay, thank you. Director Boyko?
I like the amendment, but I also like what Director Siga says that if we got to do this every 5 years, so we don't keep having these conversations, let's develop the capacity in a redundant manner. So you're not dependent on one person. You have a department where everybody can come together and they have a plan. So we have that capacity, so we don't have to keep doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Does Daniel want to say something?
Sorry, I'm throwing in a lot of amendments here. One thing we could do in part of the motion, it says using staff of the Alberni Claycourt Regional District. We could say using staff and building the capacity of the Alberni Claycourt Regional District. If that's amenable.
Thank you. Do I have a person do on the motion? Okay. Yeah, yeah. We need a first and a seconder. Are you going to first motion so we can read the amended motion? Okay, and do we have a seconder? We have a seconder, Director Sagan. The amended motion reads.
The amended motion, bear with me, reads that the Electoral Area Directors Committee directs staff to create a plan and process on options for how the ACRD could carry out the official community plans updates in a timely manner using staff and building the capacity of the Alberni Claycourt Regional District versus other contracted alternatives.
Clear as mud. It's been moved and seconded. So all those in favor? Opposed? Passed. Now, do I have to pass the original motion? No, it's okay. We just passed the amended motion. We got passed. Okay. To the motion. To the motion, exactly, yeah. So now we're going to do the motion, the amended motion, as Daniel stated. All those in favor of the amended motion? All those opposed? Passed. So now we're down to the original statement here on item 6. Are we not? We're not going to do that. But the money.
Takes care.
That took care of the money?
Yeah.
It's going to be okay.
It's going to be in the report.
It's going to be in the report and it's moved over. Thank you. So now we're on to item 7, late business. Director Ross, have your hand up.
Would this be where I would put in a notice of motion?
That would be correct.
Okay, I'm putting in a notice of motion that the staff look at what it would take to incorporate Beaver Creek. I'll just give you a little bit of background on it. Beaver Creek wants to increase local representation, like a Beaver Creek Town Council, so to speak, and enhance the delivery of local government services. Beaver Creek wants to maintain its rural nature, and many feel it's slipping away. Incorporation would allow us to maintain our rural lifestyle through having our own elected council. Decision-making would be closer to the community. Most property owners want good basic services, nothing more and nothing less. Beaver Creek is a growing community. Work is underway to seek or secure a new water source so that we do not need to rely on others for drinking water. Beaver Creek will likely be upgrading the water system to include water treatment plant. Having that in place will give Beaver Creek a more solid foundation of basic services. And that we will be talking about this at our town hall meeting this Sunday. But basically, we just want to look at it. So it would be good if staff could come back and say, what's the process at getting a study or any information they can put together about incorporating. Thank you.
We'll go Daniel and then we'll go Director Cote.
Perfect. So then just so the committee understands, a notice of motion simply places it. So it's a notice of motion for the next meeting. And then what staff won't have a complete report at that point, but we'll be ready to speak to the key issues of what's involved. so that the committee can have that discussion and understand the undertaking in just greater detail prior to moving the motion. So the notice of motion is simply to say, hey, I want us to be ready to talk about this. And at the next meeting, the committee will be in a position then to make a resolution on advancing that if they so choose. Is that okay?
Yeah, so that would be at the next electoral area directors meeting, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Thank you. And Director Cote.
Thank you. There's a big cost to this, so maybe staff could include that in their report, what the cost would be. Other communities have, Sprout Lake has had a grant in the past that was given to us by the province to investigate. Banfield also requested a grant for that and was denied in the past. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Is there any more late business? No? Okay, question period. Any questions? Oh, Dr. Sega. Oh, sorry, I didn't see Dr. Sega.
I'm just unclear why we're not voting on 6A for the funding, because I totally support the funding going towards the OCP. Thank you.
Thank you. I had the same question, but Daniel will answer it for you.
The reason is we are going to take the time to flesh out the options and then talk about how that money could apply to the various options. Rather than passing the resolution to use the money right now when the solution for contractors is not the preferred solution right now. So we're going to add that to the plan in the next discussion that we have.
Thank you for that. Is that good, Director Sega? Okay, good. So now we're down to question period.
There are no questions in Zoom and no questions received by email.
Thank you for that. That leaves us with 9A. Motion to adjourn. First, all in favor? Motion carried. Thank you.